Hey, before we get into this episode, have you seen that my new book is out? It's called Stop Selling and Help Them Buy Weddings and Events. And it's a book that you helped me write because you would ask me at a conference, which of your books has what you just spoke about on stage? And if it wasn't in any of my books, I'd say it's in the next one. Well, here it is. Here's the next one. How to respond to reviews. What if you don't like doing sales? The 3 questions to ask every prospect, or they can't ask for what they don't know exists. These are just some of the chapters in there. And the beauty is you don't have to read it front to back. You can jump around to any chapter, kind of like my other book, Wit, Wisdom, and the Business of Weddings, where you can jump to any chapter because they're not necessarily connected to one another. And if you want to get free shipping on a paperback copy, go to shopalanberg.com and use the coupon code podcast. That's shopalanberg.com. Use the coupon code podcast. Get free shipping on me. Otherwise, it's on Audible. It's on Kindle. And if you go to podcast.allenberg.com, the links are all there as well. Thanks. You know, like, and trust people. But do you know where that phrase came from? Listen to this and hear it from the author. Welcome to another episode of the Wedding Business Solutions Podcast. I'm your host, Alan Berg. I'm a speaker, author, sales trainer, website reviewer, and I help businesses like yours sell more, profit more, and have more fun doing it. Enjoy this episode. Hi, it's Alan Berg. Welcome back to another episode of the Wedding Business Solutions Podcast. I am so happy to have on another author of a book that I love, Bob Burg, no relationship, Bob Burg, or my cousin Bob, of The Go-Giver. Hey, Bob, how you doing?
Great, cousin Alan. Great to see you.
You know, I've been talking about your book for a number of years because I so much enjoyed it. I actually just listened to it again. Yes, I listen to books, even though we're authors. I love listening to books. And I love that you read your own book. You and your co-author read your own book there. And I said, wait a minute, I keep referencing you. I need to have you on. I absolutely need to have you on. So thank you for joining me. And so for people that don't know and have not yet read The Go-Giver, which is a wonderful small parable book, does not take a long time to read. You absolutely have to read this. Give us the Cliff Note version. What is The Go-Giver?
Yeah, it's about a guy named Joe, who's kind of the average Joe or Josephine, who good guy. He's salesperson. He's up and coming. He's ambitious. He's aggressive. He's out there but very frustrated that he doesn't seem to be attaining the kind of success he feels he deserves. And what happens is he meets a mentor and a series of people who share with him a very, very basic premise. And that is that shifting your focus, and this is really where it all begins, shifting your focus from getting to giving. And when we say giving in this context, we simply mean constantly and consistently providing immense value to others, understanding that doing so is not only a more fulfilling way of conducting business, it's the most financially profitable way as well. And not for any kind of way out there, woo-woo, magical, mystical type of reasons. Oh, just give and have good. No, it's actually very logical. It's very rational. When you're that person who can take your focus off yourself and place it on serving others, discovering what they need, what they want, what they desire. When you can take your focus off yourself and make it about solving their problems and challenges, when you can make it not about you, but about bringing them closer to happiness, people feel great about you. They want to get to know you. They like you and they trust you and they want to be in relationship with you and they want to do business with you and they want to tell others about you. They want to be your personal walking ambassador. And once Joe, the protege in the story, learned this, now he was able to approach business and approach life from just a very different viewpoint, which turns out to be very productive for him.
Right. And it also opens you up to possibilities because you're not so focused on the money or you're not so focused on those things, which are your results. I think this is why it resonated with me so well, because anytime in my life where I've pushed for the money, it has not worked out well for me. But anytime I put the other people first to say, if I'm providing value to you, all of a sudden it comes, the phone rings and the emails come in because you're focusing on them.
Well, there's a great reason for that ties right into human nature. Okay. And that's this, Alan. Nobody's going to buy from you because you need the money.
Right.
No one's going to buy from me because I need the money. And no one's going to buy from any of your listeners because they need the money. People
Right.
are going to do business with us because they believe that they will be better off by doing so than by not doing so. And that's wonderful. That's the way it should be. And that also is fantastic for that person, for that wedding professional who really truly has a heart for serving their clients, because it just is very natural for them to want to make this the most outstanding, right? And when that happens, and this is why John David Mann, my wonderful co-author, why we say that money is simply an echo of value. It's the thunder, if you will, to value's lightning, which means nothing more than that the value must be your focus. The value comes first. The money you receive is simply a natural result of that exceptional value you've provided.
I believe you said your compensation is directly related to how many lives you touch.
Yeah, well, and that's law too. And that, what that says is that that yes, the value you provide, very, very important. It's also a matter of how many people you're able to reach and impact with that value. And that's what Nicole Martin, the CEO in the story, told Joe, the protege, that it's that, yes, the value you provide, that's the foundational principle, right? That's the law of value. You've got to do that. But it's also not a matter of just serving one person or one family. It's a matter of being able to bring that value to a lot of people.
The wonderful thing about the wedding event industry is it's mostly reacting to the incoming lead, as opposed to cold calling, which I've done. I'm imagining that you've done that in your career, listening to the stories. And whenever I do this with an audience, they say, how many of you ever done cold calling? And people raise their hands, and I said, how many of you loved cold calling? And of course, most of the hands go down, because cold calling is there a need for what we do? Whereas most wedding event professionals, by the time someone reaches out, that event is happening, that wedding, that bar mitzvah, that kinseh, that whatever. So the idea of, and I've heard you different phrases in this, my latest book is called Stop Selling and Help Them Buy, right? They already need what you do. Help them buy the results that only you can provide. And then the money comes to you because they have to buy that from you. They have to pay you.
Yeah, well, this is also one reason why we're such big believers in referral-based businesses. And you and I are friends with Bill Cates, who's another member of National Speakers Association, the referral coach, and we what we all really believe is that when you work with referral-based prospects, if you will, there are really several advantages to all parties concerned. One is it's simply easier to set the appointment, right? Because again, you're going in through borrowed influence, which is so important. Also, with a referred prospect, Alan, price is less of an issue. Now, that doesn't mean it's a non-issue. It's still you've still got to justify, of course, the price as opposed to the value you're providing. But it's less of an issue because you're going in on that borrowed influence and borrowed trust. Now, also a wonderful benefit of working with a referred prospect is that it's simply easier to complete the sale. Why? This has got to do totally with borrowed trust, or what we call vicarious experience. So no, they may not have done business with you before personally, but someone who they know, like, and trust has said, this is the only person you need to talk to. This is the person.
Right. And this is where the social proof comes in, because for the wedding and event industry, for weddings, you do get some referrals, certainly, and you're auditioning for all of those other guests that are at the event every time, because everybody's watching, everybody is watching, paying attention, and they're asking. But the social proof, which is the crazy thing about world, because again, your friend tells you somebody does a great job, that's wonderful. Then you read about all these strangers online, on Yelp, on The Knot, on Wedding Wire, on Google, who've said wonderful things about this business, and we're trusting them. This is referred trust as well.
Sure.
We're trusting. Yeah, we're trusting these people in social proof, and this is why recent reviews are so important. We don't care what you did last year; we care what you did last week, right? Responding to the reviews is important, because that also should talk about that for a second, because I can't hammer this home enough. If someone took the time to post a review, and you're allowed to, most platforms do, but not all, why is it important to respond to that review?
So first of all, it's just that extra touch. It's that little extra thing you're doing that most other people are not.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The fact that you took the time, that you cared enough, what is it that everyone who is going to have you as the wedding professional, what is it that they want to know? That you have their best interest at heart.
Right.
And, we all know the old saying, how you do anything is how you do everything. And that's how they see you. So if you're that person who took the time to write that response, right? Or if you're the person if you're the person who once you meet someone somewhere, you take the time to write a handwritten, personalized thank you note. That, if you're that, you do those little things that most other people don't do, and you do them consistently, what are you saying to them? That's a pro. That's a person who knows what they're doing. That's a person who cares enough to make that effort.
Right.
And that's what they want.
And it's public. I see that's what I love
Public,
about
yes.
this.
Yes.
Because
yes.
you do things for your customers other people don't do, but it's not public. Other people aren't going to see that. This
Right.
is such an
When you
easy public thing to do.
Yes, it is.
Easy thing. Okay. For those who have not yet read the Go Giver, what's a MacGuffin?
Yeah. So I learned this from John, my co-author. And this, a MacGuffin is a movie term that was coined by the late British film icon Alfred Hitchcock. And a MacGuffin is the object around which the story revolves. Okay. However, when you get to the end of the story, the end of the film, if you will, you come to realize that story, that object around which the story wasn't really what the story was about. Right.
Right.
You take an old classic like The Wizard of Oz, right? And the MacGuffin was Dorothy getting back home to Kansas. That was the whole thing. Everything about it was about her getting back home. But by the end of the movie, you realize that's just the MacGuffin. That's not what it was about. What it was about was four people all coming to understand something about themselves that they didn't believe they had inside of them, that they really did.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. The sled at the end of Citizen Kane, Rosebud.
Exactly.
Yeah. Was not the thing.
No,
and what is it? The Maltese Falcon.
Exactly.
Right.
In Rocky, it wasn't the championship fight. It was about a guy who came to realize that he was not a loser, that he was a guy who had a lot of value to offer and a lot of love to give and exactly. And it's the same in business. And so that wedding is the MacGuffin.
Right.
I mean, that's everything about what you're doing that it revolves around, but that's never what it's about. It's about the feel. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, because you mentioned it in a different way, maybe exactly the same way that I talk about it. It's not the what, it's the why, right? Exactly. They need music. That's the MacGuffin, right? Why should they choose you? How are they going to feel different? They need pictures. They need food. They need a dress, right? They need clothing. These are MacGuffins. If you're selling that, somebody else sells it and they sell it cheaper than you.
Exactly. Right. That's when you become a commodity. And that's when low price becomes part of the picture. And that's the key. And if you're trying to make low price your unique selling proposition, not a good idea, unless your last name is Walmart or Amazon.com. When you sell on low price, you're a commodity. When you sell on high value, you're a resource.
Right.
And that's what we want to be.
And you talk about this a lot, and as do I, which is adding value at every touch point. So that and value is not money. Value is how they feel about the interaction. Somebody sent me I think it was a TikTok video, somebody the other day talking about this, that, you never want to be just checking in, right? Because to me, checking in says, would you like to speak to the salesperson now? Because I want to make a sale now, which is about you, the salesperson. It's not about them. But if you know that they love dogs or cats, I'm listening to the Go Giver influence now with the pet food and all of that. But if you know they love that, there was a point at the beginning of the story where the guy's first meeting the person from this nationwide pet store. He doesn't comment on the woman's picture of her daughter with the cat. Right. Meanwhile, he loves animals. And there's the opportunity right there to connect on a different level, not about business, but to connect about that.
Yeah, no, yeah, you're so totally right. And we often say the difference between price and value. Price is a dollar figure. It's a dollar amount. It's for
Right.
whatever country you're in. It's that currency. Okay.
Right.
Value is the relative worth or desirability of a thing, of something to the end user. So what is it about this thing, this product, service, concept, idea, what have you, that brings so much worth or value to that other person that they will willingly exchange their money, time, whatever for this and be glad they did. Right.
Right.
And that's really what it comes down to. At every single touch point in the process, from the moment you first meet this person to the relationship building process, the follow-up, the follow-through, the sale, the referrals, what have you, are you bringing value over and above the intrinsic value of your offering and making it so special that this person, again, feel so good about themselves, about you, about the situation? And we say, and that, because that's what we have to do to distinguish ourselves. Scott McCain, another National Speakers Association member, talks about it's not a matter of just differentiating yourself, it's distinguishing yourself, right?
Right.
And so he calls that creating distinction, one of his wonderful books. And so how do we do that? Well, we do that by being that additional value, right? They're buying us before they're buying our MacGuffin and before they're buying our company. And you say, well, how do you do that? And the good news is there are dozens, if not hundreds of ways to communicate that additional value. Now they tend to come down to five what John and I call elements of value. And those are excellence, consistency, attention, empathy, and appreciation. And to the degree that we're able to communicate those elements of value during every touch point, that's the point where we take both competition and price out of the picture.
Right. People can tell when you're being present. People can tell when you have their best interest in mind.
Mm-hmm.
I love that you said don't use a sales pitch, because I talk about this all the time. Sales pitches are like being the Disney tour guide, and on your right is a magic mountain, on your left is Cinderella's castle. There's no, you're not involving the other person. You're talking at them.
Right.
You're not having a conversation with them. I love putting up a slide that says the person talking isn't learning anything.
I love that. Oh, I love that.
Right? Because it's true. Everything you're about to say, when we're on stage, everything we say, we already know.
Right, exactly.
We didn't learn anything. We get off stage and somebody says, hey, Bob, can I ask you a question? Please ask me a question, because I'm about to learn something.
That's right.
That I need. It could be your next book. It could be the next speech. It could just be helping that person. So good competition. Let's shift just a little bit for good competition, because I want to keep track of the time here. But I loved, well, you said good competition keeps you on your toes, because people are always like, oh, this other one just opened up. This other thing, this other one just opened up. And I like to say to them, weren't you the new person once? like you're complaining about the newbie, but wasn't that you at one point? So why is competition good? Or why is good competition good?
Yeah, well, good competition does. And it's interesting. Simon Sinek, in his latest book, trying to think of it. It's like something like Playing the Long Game, or the title was The Long Game. I'm not sure, but he actually talks about that. I was glad to see that in his last book, that he was talking about that good competition kind of keeps everybody on their toes, doing better and providing better service and a better experience. It's really now, but I understand when somebody says, because let's face it, in a perfect world, a utopia, we'd be the only person offering our product or service, right? And that's not the case. So we have a couple different ways to look at it. In his classic 1910 book called The Science of Getting Rich, Wallace D. Wattles talks about the difference between living on the creative plane and living on the competitive plane. Now, to live on the creative plane means you have one focus, and that is creating value for everyone around you. Okay. In this case, of course, your customers and clients are the people ultimately you're creating that value for. If you're living on the competitive plane, it means your focus is on that competition. That's not healthy. Now, to say live on the creative, not the competitive lane, doesn't mean you don't realize you have competition. Of course you do. We're talking about the real world. You also understand their strengths and their weaknesses and so forth. And you, of course, you understand that, but that's not your focus. That's not your focus. Your focus is on how do I create such an immensely value-based experience that that person is going to choose to do business with me. When you have that attitude, you can look at competition in a very healthy way, as opposed to a way that upsets you and causes anguish and attachment and so forth.
Yeah, and you can't do anything about the competition because you don't control it.
You don't
and
control
anytime you're focusing, any moments you're focusing on that is time away from focusing on creating value for your customers.
Exactly.
Right. So I always loved, previously to what I'm doing now, I was vice president of sales of the largest wedding website in the world. Prior to that, I published 2 wedding magazines. And when I was publishing wedding magazines, I knew all my competitors. We were friends. And I hoped that they did really well.
Yeah.
Because if anybody didn't, and occasionally that happened, somebody took money, didn't publish, didn't whatever, it made us all look suspicious.
Exactly.
Right. And through the years, I've done things for competitors and people are like, well, why are you doing that? They're a competitor. I said, if my customers feels that they're getting more value with them than with me, they should go with them.
Yeah. And when you do that, a couple things is happening there. But the main thing is you're living your highest values.
Right.
Because you know that ultimately it's about taking care of the customer.
Right.
And so when you do that and you live through your highest values, and it turns out that you do recommend someone who is a competitor because it was the right thing to do, don't think that that first person doesn't know you did that. And I can't tell you how many stories, never mind personally, but from people who I know who have referred a competitor because it was the right thing to do. And it came back to them many times over again, not for some magical, mystical reasons, but because that person was so grateful that they recommended them to so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so. And many times that other competitor, even if they weren't the type who would think of doing something like that, you've just brought them up. Not always, no. But a lot of times, yes, you brought them up to that level of thinking, that creative plane. And now you've got an advocate. Now you've got someone who you're collaborating with. Now, you know, and so absolutely, that is real world stuff.
And so many things resonated. My uncle passed this year. He was 93. He was a life coach till the day he died. Okay. And he wrote a book back in the 80s called You Can Have It All, Arnold Patent. He was on Oprah when she was in Chicago.
Wow.
He was the only guest for the entire episode. She had brought him out, had him for the old, and then she brought him back with Wayne Dyer and somebody else or whatever. And I remember, I've probably spoken about this before. I remember trying to read his book. I say trying to read his book when he first wrote it in the 80s. And I was in my 20s or whatever. And I thought the man had lost his mind because he's talking about universal energy and, you know, and was it the laws of attraction and things in his own words. And he said, I didn't make this up. This is my take on this. Right. And then later in my 30s, I read it again, actually listened to it on cassette. I got cassette in his voice. And I was like, oh, now I get it. Mm-hmm. Now I understand. Mm-hmm. And you talk about, you don't realize the influence, because I'm reading your book Influence now. You don't realize the influence because it's not necessarily a direct line. It's this dotted line. And these things that come back to you, like you said, it not necessarily the person you know very well that might refer you. It might be that second or third connection down the line. When I started my business, I had gotten downsized. And I got a call from a friend and she said, oh, you know, you're right. I said, yeah, I'm fine. She said, what are you going to be doing? I said, I'm going to be doing this. I need to get, a room, like a hotel. I'm going to get a meeting space. I'm going to do these little workshops. People will pay me. And this is my friend, Cherie Ronning. And she said, okay, you're going to do Seattle and Portland first. What do you need? I said, Cherie, I didn't ask. And she put on her mother voice, Bob, and she goes, Alan, you're doing Seattle and Portland first. What do you need?
I love it.
And that's that. Here's another story for you. That's that coming back. Like I must have been giving, right, to be able to receive that kind of
absolutely
back, right. And that again, getting into the book Influence, define influence, because people think of influence like you're making people do things, but that's not what it is.
Yeah. So let's look at that because it's very important. Now, so on a very basic level, of a surface level, influence can be defined as the ability to move a person or persons to a desired action, usually within the context of a specific goal. That's the definition of influence. It's the definition, but it's not the essence. It's not the substance of influence. The essence of influence is pull as opposed to push, as in the old saying, how far can you push a rope? And the answer is not very, at least not very fast or very effectively, which is why great influencers don't push. You never hear somebody say, wow, that Tom or that Mary, she is so influential. She has a lot of push with people. No, she's very influential. She has a lot of pull with people. Pull is the difference between compliance and commitment. Okay. So how does this pull manifest itself? Well, I think, first of all, the great influencers, they understand on both an intellectual and a heart level what I believe was Dale Carnegie's underlying premise in his classic How to Win Friends and Influence People. And this is where he wrote, ultimately, people do things for their reasons, not our reasons. So the great influencer can ask themselves questions to make sure their focus is correct. See, I believe we need to be internally motivated, but outwardly focused. So the go-giver influencer or the genuine influencer constantly ask themselves questions such as, how does what I'm asking this person to do, how does it align with their goals, with their needs, their wants, their desires? How does it align with their values? How does what I want this other person to do, how does it solve their problems? How does it move them closer to happiness? Okay. And when we ask ourselves these questions thoughtfully, intelligently, genuinely, authentically, not as a way to manipulate another human being into doing our will, but as a way of building everyone in the process, now we've come a lot closer to earning that person's commitment. Again, rather than trying to depend on some kind of compliance, which is manipulation and, push and those sort of things.
Right. Which can work in the short term, but in the long term.
Yeah. Very short term it can, but it's not sustainable.
Yeah. Adam Grant wrote Give and Take. I don't know if you're
great book.
Right. Again, so many similar things to what you're talking about. The most successful people are givers, although some of the least successful are givers because they get taken advantage of. And that's there's a concept there because we want to be giving, but not to our detriment. It's to the value of others. So speak to that.
This is important. And I'm so glad you brought that up. Being a go-giver should never be confused with being a doormat or being a martyr or being self-sacrificial in any way.
Right.
Okay. It's simply understanding that when you take your focus off yourself and place it on bringing value to others, other people are going to be much more responsive to you.
Right.
Okay. But yes, we certainly, would never, ever want to give in such a way that it puts us in position to be taken advantage of. Don't do that.
Right. And another word you used in the book was magnetic, right? The idea of someone being magnetic. And this is that pull again, magnets pull things in.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. I'm looking at the time, and there was just one more thing that I chuckled at when I was listening. And you talk about someone in the book saw someone that had a nice pen, and they commented that was a nice pen. And the person said, take the pen. And he said, no, that's not my pen. That's your pen. And the person said,
okay, that was actually me. And I admit this was right after the book came out. We're talking about receptivity and the ability to allow oneself to receive. And at the time I had a bookkeeper who was doing some work with me. She came over and she was using this kind of neat looking pen. And I just made a comment. I just said, oh, Trina, that's a really cool pen. And she right away turned around and said, oh, here, take it. I have others. I said, oh, no. I just reflexively went, oh, no, I can't do that. She goes, no, really, here, take it. It's fine. I said, I wouldn't feel right. She goes, really, why won't you take them? I said, Trina, I just wouldn't feel right taking your pen. She said, she stopped. She turned around. She said, Bob, it's really a very simple 2-step process. Number one, take the pen. Number 2, say thank you. And I'm thinking, oh gosh, here I just co-authored a book where like law number 5 is the ability to receive, and so.
That gave me a good chuckle. So my wife and I have had that discussion. I noticed years ago that I would brag about her all the time, brag about my kids all the time when I wasn't with her. And then when I said, but she doesn't hear that. So I started to say out loud the things I would think. That's a nice sweater that you're wearing. Your hair looks nice today. And she'd be like, oh, this old sweater. Or, oh, I don't it's humid today or whatever. And I finally said, if you keep throwing them away, the compliments will stop coming. So the right answer is thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. That
Very
makes
nice.
me feel good. That's very nice, right? The wrong answer is no problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or oh no, right.
Right. So I'm going to end on that note because that's just struck with me. The right answer is thank you. That's all the right answer is. So along those lines, Bob, thank you for joining me and sharing your wisdom today. Anybody that has not read any of these books, because it's the Go-Giver, it's the Go-Giver Sell More, Go-Giver Influence, Go-Giver Leader. I didn't get to that one yet. Go-Giver Leader.
And John and his wife Anna actually wrote another Go-Giver book. I was not involved with this one, called The Go-Giver Marriage. Where they took the principles from the Go-Giver and put it into a parable about marriage and a how-to teaching. Anna, his wife, is in that business, and they did a wonderful, wonderful job with that.
Yeah, there were so many things that apply to life, not just about business in them. Exactly. So again, I love having my NSA, not that NSA, we're the ones that speak, not the ones that listen. I love having my NSA friends on, especially authors that I love the book. So Bob, thank you for joining me today. And please go get his books if you have not read them yet. And we'll see you on the next episode.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Wedding Business Solutions podcast. If you liked it, please subscribe to this channel and post a review on your chosen platform, Apple Podcasts or whichever one. If you have any questions about anything in this episode or any of my episodes, email me directly at alan@weddingbusinesssolutions.com or visit my website, alanberg.com. alanberg.com. If you have any suggestions for future topics or guests that you'd like to see, please again, email me or visit my website. Thanks for listening.